I'm going to show you how you can bring your 2D logos into Blender really easily using the SVG import. Now there are a few problems to look out for. I'm going to show you how to solve those problems and give you some ideas about how you can make your newly formed 3D logos look amazing. So this is a pretty comprehensive look at 3D logos. It's aimed at beginners, but make sure you've got a good understanding of the interface. It's fairly long, so I've split it into chapters for you, links in the description. As always, check out the links in the description and my website for more great content. So first of all, let's make our 2D logo. Haven't got a logo? Well, no problem. Today's sponsor is Zarla, a free logo maker. Now, initially when Zarla contacted me, I have to be honest, I wasn't that interested, as I thought most of my audience would want to create their own logos. But as always with these things, I went to their site and took a look. I was actually really impressed. It's really easy, really fast, and actually very useful. Even if you aren't going to use the logo, you can make it with their tools, and it can give you some great ideas to work from. The logo I made and converted to 3D was made initially in Zarla. I'll quickly show you the process. I promise it won't take long. It's absolutely brilliant. So the example I use just for this is Grabbit Games. Create free logo. Choose what your logo is for. So video games is what I've chosen. You can choose absolutely loads of industries. Then click next. You can have a slogan if you want. The bestest games. I'm going to let it automatically find some icons for me and see what it comes up with. You've got lots of cool font choices here and some logos, which obviously isn't so suitable for me, I don't think. I'm absolutely loving this one, and that's something I could really easily turn into 3D, which would be fun. I quite like these sort of designs as well. Oh, I've found my favourite here, look at this one. So I was really pleasantly surprised with some of the ideas and designs. I could spend ages doing this. I think my favourite is possibly this one. Then you can go in and customise it. You can pick lots of different logos from here. You can change the font really easily. I quite like that one as well. And background colours and all sorts. It's fairly obvious, to be honest. Then you just enter your email and download. This is obviously where they make their money through advertising, and you can sort of set up stores online and stuff like that. You then get an email and you can download your logo files. That takes you back to Zarla, and again, obviously they've got their advert there, and you just go to your download logos. And you've got so many options, vector options. These are really easy to bring into Blender. And you've got all your options for social media, email and so forth. Very impressive. So download all. You get a zip file that looks just like this. And the one you want to bring into Blender is under resizable logos. And any with the transparent background is going to be your best option. So let's go into Blender. I'll get rid of everything that's in the scene. So select it all and delete. And we come up to File, Import, Scalable Vector Graphics. Find your logo folder. I'm going to show you this one as it had a problem in it that I can show you how to solve. Go to your resizable logo files, vector, and I'll choose the black with transparent background and import that. So it comes in really small and you have to zoom right in, and that can actually be a problem or more an annoyance, which I'll show you how to sort out. If I click on one of the objects and go into edit mode with tab, you can see that there are actually curves. If I select one of these, it's a curve object, not a mesh object. And curve objects in themselves can be a bit of a pain to work with. You can convert this to a mesh. So I'll go back to object mode, right click, convert to, and then you've got mesh. The problem you have then, if I go into edit mode, is you've got really bad topology. The best option if you do want a mesh object, and I do prefer that myself because they're more adaptable and you can do more with them, is to actually trace around your design. I've got another video on that, link in the description and card in the corner, if you want to follow that route. And I actually think that's probably the best route, but this one's slightly quicker. So I'll undo those steps and back to my curve. Now curves do actually give us options to give it some thickness and some substance. We can go to our curve tools down here, or object data properties. Click on that and go down to geometry. Under geometry you've got this extrude option. If I click it once, it makes quite a big thick object. And 0.01 is kind of as low as it goes unless you type in your values. And that's what I meant about the fact that it's a bit of a pain when it's this small, because you always have to type in your values. So I'll undo that, I'll select it all, and you'd think you'd just be able to scale this up and maybe apply the scale, but that doesn't work on curves. What we actually have to do is go into edit mode with this, select all, and scale it up. So I'll scale it up 10 times. So press S and type in 10, then press enter, then back into object mode, then choose my object, and then use the extrude option. And you can see now we're going in smaller increments, so it's just much easier to adapt. So I can extrude it out like this, which is nice, but it's got a really sharp edge. We can come down here to the bevel and give it a bevel, so it gives it a much softer edge. You might have to go to 0.005 if you want that a bit finer, and I think that looks a bit better. Now here's one of our issues. With the curves, when I add that extrusion, it's coming up with some sort of anomaly. And you might find this in your mesh, or you might be okay. But if I go into edit mode and I choose that curve there, this is actually 2 points. If I press G to grab and move it away, you can see that there's an extra point. I'll go into wireframes so you can see that easier. So it's a bit of a pain really, but we can deal with it. I'm going to undo what I just did with the movement, and I'm going to press Ctrl X to dissolve it. That deletes the point, but still keeps the join. Then when I click on this one, I can press V to go to the handle type and change it to automatic. So now it's acting like a normal Bezier point. That brings back that curve. If I go to top view now, we can then edit the curve. So what we have here is what's called a Bezier handle, and they can be a bit complicated to someone that doesn't understand it. I suggest looking up a whole tutorial about that in itself. But if I select the center point, that selects the actual point with its 2 handles, and I can rotate it. And you can kind of see that the length of these different handles, if I grab this one and pull it out slightly, adjust the shape of the curve. You can, if I select the middle again, you can actually move these points around the place and you can kind of see the effects that has. But I think that's probably as much as I need to go into for you to have an idea. Okay, let's go back into object mode and see what we've got. So our object here is looking quite nice with its extrusion and its bevel. Objects like this can be a bit more tough. You can obviously just extrude them and give them a bevel as well, and that can look quite nice. If you wanted a rounded object, then you would need to rebuild the shape. I used 2 UV spheres, then join them in the middle and smooth them out a lot. But your logo might be very different, and just extruding the flat shape like this can look quite effective. But if you have the skills, then remodeling is a good idea. The text is just as simple. I can grab that, again extrude this, and add a tiny bit of a bevel. I think a little bit smaller on this one. Now what I did to add a bit of variation, I duplicated this, Shift D to duplicate, and then just bring it up in the Z slightly, took out the extrusion, and then put it right above my logo like this, and then I put a different texture on that, and I think it added quite a nice touch. I'll quickly go across to the shading tab, and we can grab our logo, RX90 to rotate it in the X-axis 90 degrees, add a floor, so Shift A, Mesh Plane, scale that up, select our logo, Control Box Select to deselect the floor, come to front view with 1 on my numpad, and G then Z to move that above the floor like this. I might move the top of the logo down, so G then Z, and that's looking quite nice. Now I can mess around with the materials. I'll select my top logo. Now to give them a material, what you'll find is that they've actually got this strange material here that doesn't use nodes. So you'll probably want to tick the use nodes, and then you'll get your principal BSDF that you'll be used to. I'll create a new material for this one, call it metal, and I always like to bring the metallic up, make it a little bit darker, make it nice and shiny, and it always looks quite good. At the moment I'm using Eevee, so if I go across to my render tab over here and turn screen space reflections on, that will help a lot to make it that bit cooler, maybe a bit more roughness there. Very nice. And you can obviously play around with these settings. So I've got this text at the front here. I'll give that a new texture and call this gold. I can then change this color across to a more sort of goldy color, up the metallic, bring down the roughness, and we've got a nice gold looking text there. And this gray here, I want to change that. Oh, and that had a different material, so I can just press use nodes on that. Change this to silver, and again up the metallic, down the roughness. We've got this sort of silver looking thing there. I think the back of the text can have something like a dark material, and that can look quite effective. I think it's good to contrast it with the front, so you might want to brighten up the front a bit, and then it's got that nice look there. The floor, I'm going to give that a sort of black colour, maybe a little bit grey, somewhere around there. Touch of blue in it perhaps. And it's looking quite good. All that we need to work on now is the lighting. Now Eevee's using an HDRI, so it's lighting it with this image in the background, which looks very effective and gives it a nice natural look on the reflections. However, when we go across to the render tab, we haven't got an HDRI in our scene, so it's just completely black. So we have to go across to the world settings here. So we'll need to download an HDRI and plug it into the background. The best site for this is called Polyhaven, and we can go to HDRIs here and just download one of these. I suggest something in a room, this one for example. 2K is absolutely fine, and you can just press download. To plug it into our background, again make sure you're on the world tab, Shift A to add, texture, environment texture, bring that in here, open up and find your file. I've got lots of them, and if you want to see what they look like, press on the thumbnails over here. I think that's the one I downloaded. Anyway, the Studio Country Hall. Open up and link it up from the color to the color. Then we've got this beautiful background here. And that looks pretty good. We can up the strength, make it a bit brighter if you need to. I feel like the floor needs a bit of work, so I'm going to go back to the Object tab just here. With the floor selected, I can change this slightly. Let's see what it looks like when it's a bit brighter. Not too bad. We are in Eevee at the moment, and you can tick the ambient occlusion to give it that bit of shadow in the crevices. But I think it looks a bit better if we go across to cycles. And remember, I'm in the render properties just here. So I'll change the render engine to cycles. I'll change to my GPU because that will speed things up. And we've got much more realistic looking shadows, which looks quite nice. I'll make the floor really, really, really big. And now if I come around to somewhere like here, that's looking pretty nice. Now if you want a sort of flat floor like this, let's say, and you don't want to see the background, then you can come down to the film option here and tick transparent. That will now render the background as transparent and you'll be able to edit it. The alternative to that, if I just scale my floor in a little bit, is to create what's called an infinity screen. For this I'll come back to layout, it's a bit easier to see. There's my floor just there. I'll go to Eevee so we can see the results. Into edit mode with our floor, into edge mode, select the back edge, E to extrude and Z to pull it upwards, and then select this edge here and bevel it. So that's Control B to bevel. And then move your mouse to the side to make the bevel bigger, use the wheel of your mouse to create more cuts, and you've got this infinity screen as it's known as. It's flat shading at the moment, so you've got these sort of flat sharp edges. Right click, shade smooth, will create a nice smooth edge. Now if we go back to shading, we've got this nice background. You can obviously scale in the X if you want to make it really wide like this. You may need to add some lights to your scene to make it look even better. I'll go back to layout for that as well. Zoom out just a touch, Shift A to add, and light. Choose an area light, G to grab, in the Z axis, move it upwards, scale it right up, just move it right over my object like that. We can change the cycles in here as well and see what that's looking like. It's only 10 watts, so it's not doing much. Let's change this to 500 and see the impact that has. It's quite nice. Back to shading, and we're looking pretty good. There's more you can do with the lighting and you can make it look really interesting. Check out my resources on lighting and 3-point lighting, links in the description. Hopefully that's given you a really good rundown of how you can go from a 2D basic SVG file and make them look really nice in 3D. Thanks once again to our sponsor Zarla, do check them out. I think it's a really useful site. And thanks to you for watching. I'll see you next time.